Well, we are approaching a decade of waiting for our National League Central team to win the pennant. Come on, Brewers. Let's make this happen.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. But for those of you watching us here on the YouTubes, you can see that I am not flying solo today, that this is indeed a crossover with Locked On Brewers. Host of Locked On Brewers, please introduce yourself to the fans.
Oh, Sully, thank you very much. Chuck Freimund, proud host of Locked On Brewers, trying to push, pull, or drag the Brewers to their second World Series and the first in 42 years. I'm trying my best, Sully, and it's not happening.
Well, we're going to unpack a lot of things. We're going to unpack some things in the division. We're going to talk about a little bit how it was just a decade ago. It seemed like the pennants came through the Central. But today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and get started with $150 in bonus bets. If you win your first $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com to get started. You know, I actually had to stop for a moment. I'm going off the list here for a second.
Mhm.
I had to stop for a second and ask myself, wait, does Milwaukee have an NHL team? And they don't.
No.
Utah doesn't have a name. But I actually was starting. The reason why that hit my mind is I was thinking about more recent championships for fans of I'll just say in Wisconsin, because obviously probably the most popular team in Wisconsin does not play in Milwaukee. That would be the Green Bay Packers, for those who are keeping score at home. Of course, the Milwaukee Bucks won the NBA title a few years ago.
2021.
But I thought to myself, wait a minute, they don't have an NHL team. And then I was thinking to myself, hockey teams move so often that I sometimes forget who was where, because I forgot Seattle had a team, and now Utah has a team, and Arizona no longer has a team, and Atlanta doesn't have a team. There's a lot of teams move around.
We have an AHL team, Sully, that's very good. The Milwaukee Admirals.
Yes,
very good. Just went to a game on Saturday night. Yeah, my kid plays for the Junior Admirals. Ironically,
really.
And I can't even ice skate. And I can't even ice skate.
I actually found out I could ice skate, provided you don't expect me to do anything but go in a circle.
Oh man, I can't even do that.
But this is not Locked On ice skating. I just was thinking about the good fans of Milwaukee who did get a title this decade with the Bucks. But man, the Central, it wasn't that long ago that, this was helped by the fact that the Cardinals went on a great run. But you had the St. Louis Cardinals, and you had the 1 year with the Cubs, where there was a bunch of National League Central teams winning pennants. And you also had that in that same stretch of time, you had Cleveland, Kansas City, and Detroit winning a series of pennants. It was a period about a decade or so ago where the World Series seemed to come through the Central. And since that rainy night in Cleveland, we haven't had a Central team win a pennant yet. What the heck is going on in the National League Central? What is it about that division that they, and it isn't always because, well, the biggest and best teams go through. Freaking Arizona got through. We've had some, when Philadelphia won their pennant in 2022, I mean, they were a rising team, but no one was picking them to win Billy Boo that year. And even the Braves team that won, are you starting to see a pattern for the teams I'm talking about here?
Yeah, big spenders.
And they all played Milwaukee in the postseason.
Yeah. Ironically, Sully, this is the first time in Brewers history where the Brewers, the team they lost to in the postseason, did not go to the World Series.
I noted that. I was there I went to the when the Mets won Game 5 against Los Angeles in the NLCS.
Mhm.
I kind of nodded, thinking like, "Oh, they're going to do it, aren't they? They're going to do it." But they didn't. The Dodgers wound up winning the whole thing. That was in all the papers. Um, I
And I
think
was a,
this year must.
and I was the idiot that bet on the Dodgers that day, and the Mets won. And that's the last time I bet against the Dodgers ever.
Well, I hope if you bet, I hope you used FanDuel, which is America's #1 sportsbook. But more on them later. Um, Look, I can't put it all the blame on just the Brewers and how bad things have gone. That they're a very good regular season team, and they won 93 freaking games this year.
I know. They did so many right things this year, Sully. They won the division. They were one of the best defensive teams, had one of the best bullpens in baseball, clutch hitting. A lot of the analytics, they were in the top half. I mean, way top half of. It's just this team, they get to the postseason, and you think they're going to close it out. They have Devin Williams on the mound. They got the lead going into the bottom of the top of the ninth inning, and then he gives up the
Well, we'll
blast.
get to that. We'll get to that in a minute because I do want to unpack that for a little bit.
Yep.
But the Brewers won the division handily,
Mhm.
losing their manager, losing their ace, and they ran away with it. No team in baseball, no division champion in baseball had a wider margin than the Milwaukee Brewers, who finished a full 10 games ahead of Chicago and St. Louis, who were tied for second. And they were, they were afterthought. They weren't even playoff contenders. Going into this next year, the 2025 season, before we unpack the Brewers, which central team do you look at as the most realistic team to knock the Brewers off their perch at the top of the division?
I think there's two, but I'll start with the Chicago Cubs, who Craig Counsell, the former Brewer manager, did say toward the end of the season, look down the road. Those guys right now are the kingpins of the division. They're the team. They're better than us. We got to somehow get better than them. So I think the Cubs, a move here or there or a few more, they have a shot. The Brewers won 93 games, but a lot of things went right for them. I'm not going to disparage the 93 wins, but a lot of things did go their way. And I talked about all those stats a little while. But I think, Sully, if I'm going to point to one team, I'm going to say the Cubs, followed by, you just never count out the Cardinals. I picked Cincinnati to win this division. They got some proving ground for me before I picked them again. But I think this is, you're going to see some teams get better. They have to. I still think, even though the Brewers won the division handily this year, it's still an open division. The Brewers are still the kingpins of the division, but that doesn't mean that another team cannot get better overnight in this division and unseat them.
Well, we've seen that. We've seen teams turn things around relatively quickly. We've seen the Diamondbacks go from 100 losses to the World Series. We saw Kansas City lose over 100 games in 2023 and make the playoffs in 2024. I do think that one of the things that this is not to take away from Milwaukee. I think one of the things that has happened is that the team that was the gold standard of the Central has made bad move after bad move, and that's St. Louis.
Yeah.
You take a look at how many trades have exploded in their face. How many big free agent signings or big, they brought in Arenado and Goldschmidt, and chances are they're both gone next year without a single pennant being pushed in St. Louis since their arrival. And how many times have you seen them come out the wrong end of a trade? Heck, even, freaking Edmund, coming off and becoming all these terrific players who have shown in the postseason, whether it's, Alcantara, whether it was a Rosarena, whether it was Gallen, all these people who all started off as Cardinal prospects, they've sent them all packing, and now they have their tail between their legs with the Arenado Goldschmidt era is going to end with a whimper. I think the fact more than anything, the Brewers have done the right moves and have put together a quality team, but the team that should be the gold standard of this division, certainly since in the last couple of years, have really become just another mediocre team.
Well, in the last 2 years at least. But before that, and we'll see, they're going to make obviously a managerial change. But do you think the team that should be dominating this division, and they have all the financial wherewithal, is the Chicago Cubs?
Yeah.
Don't you think that, okay, they're a major market. How come they're not like the Mets? How come they're not like the Yankees? How come they're not like the Dodgers? I'm glad they're not, but the Brewers have owned the Cubs over the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. And yeah, the Cardinals have got that great tradition right now. And you never count them out, and I don't expect them to stay down. And they got some work ahead of them. But the Cubs with the resources they have and the TV money, and the Brewers are losing some TV money. And the Cardinals on top of it, their payroll last year was $160 million. They're cutting that down because they're going through a rebuild, Sully. But the Brewers payroll, like $115 million. There's no reason, I've said this, no reason the Brewers payroll should not be where St. Louis is as at 160.
Exactly.
Comparable markets, Sully. But you look at the Cubs, they should be spending $300 million like the big markets do.
Well, and it makes no sense to me, but hey, if you're a Brewers fan, you still have an excellent shot to make it yet another 90-some-odd win team and yet another division title. When we come back, we're going to unpack a little bit of what went wrong, and then we're going to talk about what could go right. The World Series, Super Bowl, the Olympics, the world's top athletes get to play on these top-level sporting events thanks to one thing, teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find you the right policy to keep your financial legacy safely in your family's end zone. SelectQuote is one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience helping more than 2 million customers and find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. Other life insurance brokers are impersonal, one-size-fits-all policies that may cost you more, cover you less, while SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents work for you to tailor a life insurance policy for your individual needs in as little as 15 minutes. You invest so much time to take care of yourself and to be your healthiest, best version of you. SelectQuote's exclusive policies can reward that effort. If you're in good health, they work with carriers that can get you same-day coverage for up to $5 billion with no medical exam required. And these policies are more affordable than you think. You can get coverage for up to $100 million. Up to $1 million for as little as $20 a month. Whoops. Head to SelectQuote.com and a licensed insurance agent will call you right away with the right policy for your life and your budget. SelectQuote, they shop, you save. Get the right life insurance for you for less at SelectQuote.com/lockedon. Go to SelectQuote.com/lockedon to get started today. That's SelectQuote.com/lockedon. So many things were going right for the Milwaukee Brewers heading into the ninth inning of the playoffs against the Mets this year.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of mind-boggling in a way. I mean, the Mets won. The Mets doubled up the Brewers in the first game. The Brewers had the dramatic victory in game two, an underappreciated dramatic victory in game two, and took all the momentum into game three, and a shutout. And Pete Alonso, of all people, hitting the opposite field home run. You couldn't have asked for a better pitching setup when they had Myers, McGill, Mears, and then Freddie Peralta coming out of the bullpen, and then handing the ball to Williams. And, the polar bear hits the opposite field. And there you have OMG. They had to throw freaking Peterson to close out the game. People forget it was not Diaz who closed out because Diaz had come in the 6th or 7th inning. But at that moment, that is one of those great rug pull moments that which only baseball can provide. But still,
and then the
think
Brewers
about how
have
the playoffs could have been so different if they won that game. Sorry,
yeah.
go for it.
No. But in the bottom of that ninth inning, then after Alonso hits the home run, bottom of the ninth inning, the Brewers put a guy on with one out, and the crowd is ready to go, and they can sensing a rally. This is going to happen, and all of a sudden, Terang hits into a bang double play to short. I mean, bang.
Yeah.
One hopper, boom, touch second out of first, and as fast as Terang is, he wasn't going to beat that out, and it was like, wow, the season is over. In a span of 15 minutes, we went from celebrating, and I went down to the locker room after the game. I covered the Brewers and went down there, and before they let us all in, they wheeled out the champagne like they're wheeling out a patient from the emergency room.
By the way, for David Peterson, who is not normally a closer, was brought in. You're right. They let up the leadoff hit. And Peterson, who was this was his first relief appearance of the year. He didn't throw it out of the bullpen all year. Do you have how many pitches he threw that ninth?
20?
8. He threw 8 pitches.
Oh, okay.
He threw 8 pitches.
All right.
That's usually an at bat against some of these players who foul off and take pitches. 8 pitches and it's done.
8 pitches. Well, like I mentioned, that double play.
Yeah.
I was stunned for 3 days on the Alonso home run. But here's the way we always put it in Wisconsin. Just another day in Brewer history. Those kind of things happen to this team.
It really does.
It's a cyclical thing. You start to believe, you get your hopes up, you're all in, and they cut your heart out. It's a flow chart, Sully. You're a teacher. You understand those flow charts.
I understand the flow charts, and I also understand that when we all saw they played the Phillies, the Mets played the Phillies in the next round. Yeah. I picked the Phillies to win the whole damn thing.
Yeah,
I thought they were the best team on paper.
I did too,
in the National League. And then when you saw the Mets take advantage of the Phillies, I can't imagine. Of course, I can imagine. I have a picture of that many times. I can imagine that feeling of, oh God, that could have been us. We could have,
well, like so many other times in Brewer history. But I think the Mets, they won that game down in Atlanta earlier in the week on a Monday. That doubleheader they had to play. They won that first game in come from behind fashion. So they win that.
That was a dramatic game. It was that doubleheader day they had.
So, it wasn't like they were going to be exhausted. I've seen this happen with teams before. They had a lot of adrenaline. They came out to Milwaukee and they were ready to go. They were ready. They weren't tired. They weren't exhausted. And they probably should have won the first 2 games of the series. But Milwaukee won the second game, getting late home runs. But that was a Mets team that was just on a roll. But after they beat Milwaukee, I wouldn't have been surprised if they would have went to the World Series. Not at all.
Yeah. I mean, this is and by the way, on when this show is being dropped on the 13th of November. So happy birthday to Wade Miley. Wade Miley, Brewers pitcher. Happy birthday.
Now former, because the Brewers did not they declined the option.
Oh, they did. Oh, I didn't know that. I know he really wasn't much of a factor this year, but Wade Miley who has a 14-year career and was an all-star one year and had one of those and pitched for the Brewers when they went to Game 7 of the National League Championship Series in 2018 and had one of those weird careers where he pops up and every time you think, oh, he's going to be an all-star caliber pitcher. He has a bad season, and then you count him out, and then he has a good season. Who knows what to make of him?
Pitched a no-hitter in his career.
That's right. And he played for an Astros team that wound up winning the pennant in 2019 and played in the playoffs for that team. They didn't play in the World Series, but he played in the playoffs for that team. But I just want to wish a happy Brewer birthday. This is a frustrating, obviously frustrating finish for the Brewers, and it's sort of watching the Mets have their way with the Phillies added to it, and also added the fact that the Dodgers while they went on to win the World Series, didn't have a starting rotation. I mean, you wonder if a more sound team with maybe a deeper pitching staff like Milwaukee had, and a much better defensive team than the New York Yankees could have exposed some of the lack of depth in terms of the starting pitching for the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Yeah,
I think the Dodgers were a great team, so maybe this is just
well, you have MVPs, the first three guys in the lineup.
Yeah.
I mean, the Brewers. Look at the Brewers lineup. Look at the Dodgers lineup.
Yeah.
And again, in baseball, you can get it done, but still, you would take what the Dodgers bring to the table over the Brewers.
Well, look, when we come back, we're going to take a look at what they could do moving forward. But I will note who was the National League Championship Series MVP for Los Angeles. Do you remember?
The MVP, the series against the Mets.
Against the Mets, yes.
Was it Steve Garvey?
No, he did. Nor did he win his election to the Senate. It was Tommy Edman, yet another player traded away from the St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah.
And you would think he would have been a Cardinal for life because he was a Cardinal at Stanford. He was a Stanford Cardinal and a St. Louis Cardinal. And lo and behold, they couldn't get the job done. Well, when we come back, we're not going to talk. 2024 is in the rearview mirror. And every once in a while, you will see that team that has that elusive championship come true. It happened with the Nats. It happened with the Rangers. Can it happen with the Brewers? We'll talk about it when we come back. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So if you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page when you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. This FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, which is the official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. All right, this is a Locked On MLB, Locked On Brewers crossover. Chuck Freimund and your pal Sully are here. All right, you see teams can wind up doing it. The Braves kept stubbing their toe. They finally won it all. Ask our friend Bryce Patrick and Locked On Rangers, after smacking their head on the beam of frustration for years and years. The Rangers finally won it all. The Nats finally won it all. Could it be the Brewers' chance to finally win it all and give Milwaukee their first World Series championship since 1957 when the Braves were here? Besides striking oil underneath the stadium and suddenly becoming one of the great spenders, we know they're not in the Juan Soto.
It's an idea, though.
That would be great. Keep drilling. What is the biggest issues going into the offseason, and why is it Willy Adames?
Well, Willy Adames isn't coming back. I think there's fans who are hopeful that he's going to take the hometown discount. And, Sully, those things never turn out. So I think what they need to do is when Adames signs with the Dodgers or the Mets or someone like that, the Brewers need to get a third baseman. They're going to move Ortiz from third base to short, although they haven't discounted Terang moving to short, which I find is odd. They need to get themselves some production power to replace the bat of Adames in the lineup and move that guy over to third base. So what I'm saying here, the Brewers ideally would love to have a power hitting third baseman. I would love Bregman here. I know he's going to command too much money. We're going to need that oil field to pay Alex Bregman if that was to happen. So what the Brewers will end up having to do probably is going out there and finding some bottom of the barrel player who's trying to restart his career. Some guy who's probably a former MVP. Will put him at third base and hope and pray that guy can have a career year.
And who could you be talking about here?
I don't know, but somebody always pops up out of nowhere. The Brewers have a knack for doing this, getting guys who are at the end of their career or might be down at AAA or might be making a comeback. Oh, let's give this guy a try. And then a month later, we're like, what are you doing? But I think that's what's going to be. Sully, the only trade bait they have really is Devin Williams, unless they get somebody's third baseman that way. They're going to need a third baseman. I would love for Kim to be here. Got some questions about coming off the surgery. Maybe he's going to the Giants, but I think third base, in my eyes, third base is the big position they have to fill with Adames leaving and then Ortiz moving from third to short.
I made the prediction in my free agent predictor episode that Kim was going to go to Milwaukee.
Really?
That was my that was because I think at some point, yes, the Mets are big spenders. Yes, Los Angeles are big spenders. The Yankees are big spenders. But eventually they will they'll have filled their positions. And every year you will see a free agent who is still available come when spring training is, rearing its ugly head. And I have a feeling that I think Adames is I forget where. I think I had him going to the Astros in my opinion. I think that was my prediction. I'll have to look it up. But Bregman is going to get a good offer. And I think he could wind up going to the Yankees, especially because they need infield help.
Yeah.
They were playing Jazz Chisholm out of position, and Gleyber Torres is going to leave. And so they're going to get someone, but every year there's a player who you're like, I can't believe this player's not signed. And if you're a Kim and you could sign a short-term deal for a team that's probably going to go to the postseason and showcase yourself, I mean, part of me wants to see the Brewers just play supermarket sweep with all of the free agents who are like on the next tier down from obviously Juan Soto is coming to Milwaukee, but after the first few big stars, there's a drop off to quality players, and we're seeing that over the years that the free agent market, the big superstars don't tend to get out.
That's how the Brewers got. That's how they got Rhys Hoskins. Remember that we got towards spring training, and it's like, Rhys was unsigned, so the Brewers got him, and now they're paying him $18 million because he picked up the option of his deal. But that's what you're talking about, a guy like Rhys Hoskins who doesn't sign with anybody, and then hey, how about Milwaukee?
You picked him up. He didn't have a great year, but you picked up 26 home runs, and you got a little pop in there. And obviously, this is a team that's going to try to build around Jackson Chourio. This is clearly one of the ways they're going to make this work is to try to to have the team build up your Tarangs and the Chourios and the people where you build them up through your system, and try to have everything have it be a nice Venn diagram of quality players playing there, and of course and hopefully you're getting more production out of Contreras as well.
He just won the team offensive MVP as expected. Just a great year with the bat again, 2 years in a row for him. But the catcher spot I'm not worried about. I think first base you got Hoskins, second base Turang, shortstop Ortiz will be there. In the outfield you got Yelich. You might have a surplus of guys. I'm thinking you might trade Garrett Mitchell. You could trade. I don't think they would do it. Sal Frelick would return you something. I think, I don't know. He's just won a Gold Glove. He doesn't hit with a lot of power. He's got to prove more, I think, offensively, but a guy who's great defensively. I think though, just the third base spot would be the ideal. If you can get yourself a third baseman, there's reports that the Brewers are going to just keep everybody the same without Adames and then just run it back, as they say.
In terms of their prospects, is there who are the top prospects that you are hoping will be able to contribute in 2025? I'm not talking down the road. I'm talking like who's ready to contribute on the big league level.
Well, Tyler Black was up and down, and some
Mhm.
people think that he should be playing third base. I'm not sold on him. Jefferson Cuero is their catcher. You would think of the future, but since Contreras is under contract for a long time, I don't know where Cuero fits in. But the guy to watch is Jacob Mizorowski. He throws 100. Just got to get the control under wraps. But he's in AAA right now. He's amazing. He could be a closer. He could be a starter. I think he'll be on this team. He'll be the one guy who was not on the team last year, called from AAA, that I think makes this roster as part of their bullpen.
What position did Tyler Black play? I'm sorry, I thought he was an outfielder.
Third, and he plays some first base if he had to, or third base.
Okay.
He played either one of the corner spots.
You'll forgive me if I'm not the biggest study of Tyler Black's career. Well, there you go. I mean, I think that I would not sacrifice defense on this team for this reason. This is a team that has obviously want to be able to get a little more power on this team. Obviously, want a little more pop on this team. But one of the things that I think is an advantage, at least in terms of the 162 game schedule, is they seem to play smart baseball. They seem to play good defensive baseball, and they seem to be able to make up for their lack of being able to be one of the big spenders by not giving away outs. By not giving, I mean, I know it's not as sexy, but at the same time, you don't see the Brewers beating themselves with dumb plays or pulling off. People are going to be looking at that fifth inning that the Yankees had for years and years, and we're hearing well, they value the star power and over fundamental baseball. Well, that can come and bite you in the tuchus, especially if you're trying. If you don't have a huge margin of error, then not giving outs away and not giving runs away seems like a smart way to put things together.
And that's how they won a lot of games, by playing strong fundamental baseball and just outthinking the other team, outsmarting the other team. Pat Murphy, in some cases, I don't like to use the word outmanaged, but he did outmanage a couple of guys at times this year, and I think he's going to be manager of the year. Who knows? But I think he is.
He should be.
He should be. I agree. Probably unanimous. But that's what they have to do. This team, I've always said, Sully, this team's got a small margin of error where they can't make the mistakes. They can't do it. Nobody can really do what the Yankees did that night, but even less than that. You got to be able to execute. They pull off the double steal. They rely heavily on analytics. They run the bases really well. They had 2 Gold Glovers for the first time since I think the late 70s. It was 1979. It was with Sal Frelick and Bryce Terang. So you start there. You got 2 solid defensive players, and everybody else in the team is solid defensively, with the exception of Rhys Hoskins, and he wasn't bad over at first base this year.
No, yeah, he's not going to kill you.
No.
So. All right. Well, hey, Chuck. Before we leave, give me one thing you hope happens this offseason.
Well, I hope you and I have another podcast together this offseason, for one.
All right.
So I'm going to have to give you another one.
Yes,
I hope that they, Sully, go out and get themselves I would love to get themselves a third baseman, a guy. I would take Kim on this team. Again, I have a little reservation about that arm. I would love Bregman, but they need to replace the 32 home runs by Willy Adames. That's number one. And trading Devin Williams and getting a good return for Devin Williams, I think, is implement. So there we go. Sully, Bregman, and trading Devin Williams. Those are 3 things on my off-season calendar already.
Well, one of them is going to come true. Hopefully I can also do a show with you. All right, absolutely. Chuck, where can they listen to your show?
Of course, Locked On Brewers. You get us on Google, Spotify, Apple, wherever you download your podcast. We're on all the platforms, the number 1 Brewers podcast on the internet because of the great Brewers fans out there, and for being on Locked On MLB with Sully. Huge boost to the ratings. And also find me on Twitter, Chuck Freimund, Freimund, and our growing YouTube page. Search Locked On Brewers on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell. It'll alert you every time we drop an episode on Locked On Brewers. The pleasure was all mine, Sully.
You can follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called now. And on Instagram, I'm your pal Sully. It's Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Brewing up a conversation in this offseason with Chuck Freeman. This has been a Locked On MLB, Locked On Brewers crossover. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. All right, hold on.